Me. I love it. But it puzzles me as well. And even though it sounds strictly old time, there are elements of everything from punk to white gospel in the songs and in their attitude. I've been talking to Gil and David since 1996 when I interviewed them when they played the Da Club in Dublin. And most of tonight's programme is based around an interview for the Harrow and the Harvest tour at the Grand Canal Theatre in November. And some of it's from an interview for the Midland Festival down in Mullingar. One of the best ways to understand where Gillian comes from is to listen to her autobiographical song, No One Knows My Name, from the album Soul Journey. Gillian Welch was adopted at birth. Her mother was a young Southern college student, her father a traveling musician. She was adopted by two songwriters who decamped to Hollywood to do the music for the Carol Burnett show. She was brought up, obviously, in a very musical atmosphere. She learned to play guitar fairly young, singer-songwriter circles. She had the Woody Guthrie songbook, the Carter family songbook. She was such an exceptional student that, in fact, there was a documentary which focused on her about the high school student who could accomplish everything. She went off to UC, University of California, San Jose, to study photography. And one day, when she was scrubbing the bathtub in a shared flat, she first heard the Stanley Brothers.
I know, yes, I was, truly. Dropped the sponge, ran in. What is that?
I think she'd just be, maybe you'd sound more like Richard Thompson.
I'd probably sound more like James Taylor or Paul Simon or...
Okay, Paul Simon.
You know, because I was very deep into the singer-songwriter thing. I just hadn't found... It's the slightly more, classical, slightly boiled down aspect that really, really hit me so hard, so appealed to me,
Well, and you knew all the songs already from being a kid and singing them.
Yeah,
so.
I'd grown up singing the folk songs,
Can't you just hear the influences in that? After her bathtub epiphany with the Stanley Brothers, Gillian finished her degree in photography, but decided that really music was where she had to go, and she went off to the Berklee College of Music in Boston, where she met David Rawlings at an audition for the only bluegrass band in the college. David's from Rhode Island, and even though Rhode Island is a tiny state, he's from the backwoods of Rhode Island, what they call a swamp Yankee, same as me. He was studying guitar, loved country music, but didn't know what to do about it, kind of. They got together, and it was a musical marriage made in heaven. After finishing up at Berklee, they both headed to Nashville, wrote songs, and tried very hard not to have a day job. Did you want to be songwriters, or did you want to be performers?
I wanted to be a performer.
Okay.
But I wanted to be a singer-songwriter. So I had it in my head that the way, first you needed songs.
Okay,
so,
logic.
I moved to Nashville. Dave moved to Nashville. I'm concentrating on writing songs. And one of the great things about Nashville is it is a song town. Mm-hmm. And I needed money, and I didn't want to work a job. Mm-hmm. Because of the time, because there are only so many hours in the day. Yeah. And I've always been a fairly methodical, fairly slow writer. So I went looking for a publishing deal to be subsidized. Okay. To get some money to be a songwriter. And a wonderful man named David Conrad signed me. He's the first guy who ever gave me a job in the music industry.
And he worked for Elmo Irving, the publishing branch of what used to be the old A&M Records.
Yeah.
Jerry Moss and Herb Alpert's label.
Yeah.
And Elmo Irving, that connection is why, that's how Gillian ended up getting heard by Jerry Moss, who was Almo Sound.
David then sends a tape to Jerry Moss and says, I just signed this girl to a writing deal. You should check her out. And he sends the tape to Jerry, and then Jerry
just happens to be about to start a new label.
Is about to start a new label. He was forbidden to start a label after he got out of A&M for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
And then he and Herb Alpert were ready to start a little label again. And so he was just starting to look for acts, and so I flew out to both of my deals. It's so funny in this day and age, but, you know, Dave and I really are, in a way, on the tail end of old school record industry.
Yeah.
Both of my deals I got by going into the guy's office with my guitar and sitting in front of his desk and playing songs on my guitar.
You did a Tammy Wynette.
Yeah, I did the thing where you walk into the guy's office with your guitar and you sit in front of his desk and you play for him.
Yeah, and David Conrad, who was from North Carolina but had moved to Nashville as a protege of Chet Atkins. Chet had heard him play. Yeah. Chet would have, like, local kids who were very talented, prodigies or whatever, sometimes up at his shows and let them play a little bit with him. And I think David was one of these kids. Okay. And he'd moved to Nashville and was a very good guitar player, but then had sort of drifted into the business side of things. And, like, one day after you'd been signed, not long after you'd been signed, he said, "Oh, we should I'll take you guys over, you can play for Chet," you know. And so we get sat down in Chet's, you know, in his house. He has this great little room with an office. And Chet was he had a great sense of humor. He was a funny guy. He had little knickknacks around his office, including, like, something someone had given him called a folk singer's guitar, and it was just a guitar body, but then the neck only had, like, it was this long and only had 3 frets on it, because that's all that folk singers need. but so in the midst of this, we go in and sit down and play, you know, Orphan Girl
we played
or something
for
Chet. I'm taking a little guitar solo. Gil actually used to take a guitar solo when we played Orphan Girl.
We did.
And so she's taking a guitar solo.
There's 2 solos in Orphan Girl, and I used to take one of them, and I would just play the melody, kind of Mother Maybelle Carter style. I would just play the melody. And we're playing, I think I used to take the second solo. And we're playing, and I'm singing, and all of a sudden, I realize I'm about to take a guitar solo for Chet Atkins. And, oh, my God, I about died. But he was lovely.
And their second album, Hell Among the Yearlings, David said was actually quite difficult to make.
Hell Among the Yearlings was a difficult record to make. And
well, it was the first one you'd done completely on your own.
No, that's not true. That was produced by T-Bone. But he had sort of left during the process. And
I always consider that your album.
Oh, that's funny.
Revelator is the one where we're really left to our own devices.
Well, that we just make on our own.
Like, truly.
But so there's a few tracks on the end of it. Just, you know, Hell, we weren't given a lot of time to write before it. We were still on the major-ish label. Yeah. And so there was some pressure just to get it out. And we did some recording truly at the last. We did some the day before the record was mastered, which is the end of all
end of the musical process.
Things.
That's the end.
We recorded 2 songs at the house
and FedExed them out
to the mastering engineer. We'd already sent the lyrics, and they were barely. We wrote them, sent the lyrics before we recorded them, edited, FedExed them, and put them on a plane.
Tell me what they were.
It's Rock of Ages.
Yeah.
And Miner's Refrain. And neither of those existed before that.
So no one at our record label, nor our producer T-Bone, had heard them. Honey Now was also recorded at our house.
Yeah.
But
T-Bone
had heard that. We brought that into the session as a demo, and T-Bone loved it and just wanted to use.
I have a very curious query, which is dates to, I think, songs from around this time. You've written songs other people have covered, and you've never recorded them?
True.
There's a few of those.
Dry Town?
Uh-huh.
And I can't remember the name of the one Trisha Yearwood covered.
Trisha did
2 Days From Knowing.
2 Days From Knowing.
Yeah, and
which
then
was a B-side.
Then there's Wichita, which
Wichita's a very good song.
It's a great song.
There's Wichita. There's 455 Rocket.
Yes.
There's New Favorite.
There's a New Favorite that Alison Krauss
Are you
did.
ever going to?
There's versions.
The demos exist somewhere.
Because
all those people had to learn the song. They learned it from versions that we had recorded.
I mean, some of the songs that you mentioned, just from there's like a song like Wichita, that was cut for the first record and didn't really fit in. It was cut for the second record and was one of the things that got bumped at the last second, I'm pretty sure. Because it just was too sunny for that record.
It is,
in its way.
Even though it's a heartbreak song, it's a sunny heartbreak
And I think
song.
we tried to cut it for Revelator briefly. The sad thing is, I now, again, putting on my hat,
Producer hat.
I'm really disappointed that it didn't occur to me to cut it for Soldier in it, because I think that's the
It
record
would
it would have fit on.
Yeah.
And we were in the middle of another thing and we just forgot about it.
It was just in hindsight, we're like, oh.
Now, each time in the past few years that I have interviewed Gil and David, I've asked them a question about, are you ever going to do a live album? I would love to have one, and I think most people would as well. And each time, David has put us off, qualified. This is just quintessential David Rawlings.
I've thought about it. Dave, have you thought about it?
Sure, yeah. We haven't done it, though.
But you record most of your gigs, don't you? Or do you know?
We have a fair number of the shows recorded. Yeah, I don't know that they're of a quality that you would necessarily
You're a perfectionist.
release. But, no, I don't mean the performances so much as I mean the recordings.
You know, the hard thing with a live record also is,
I know you're a perfectionist,
well,
David Rawlings.
there is they are something different. They're not a live performance either. They're a recording of a live performance. When you listen to a live record, it's not the same experience as being there.
It's true.
You know?
And I recognize that there is something different about our live performance than our studio performance. I describe it as slightly more extroverted. I hear it as slightly more muscular. Whereas in the studio, we are more internal. But I recognize that people have a different experience of the music live. This is a tune that I learned from Doc Watson a long time ago. And I got the words wrong on my version, but that's what makes it my version. And now other people can listen to my version and learn the wrong words. So this is Make Me Down a Pallet on Your Floor. Make me down a pallet on your floor. Make me down a pallet on your floor. Make me down a pallet soft and low. I'm broken, I got nowhere to go. Been hanging around with good time friends of mine. Hanging around
my last questions to Gil and David at Midlands all those years ago was, do you have a new album? Are you working on a new album? What's the story?
As soon as we can.
I mean, have you started it, or...?
Yeah, we've started it. Wow, I got a big chuckle. I almost made you spit that out.
I was going to say anything that we would say would probably be wrong. So there's no. I mean, it's not trying to withhold information so much as it is
stores by Christmas.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh God, no! It's just that I get pestered. Therefore, I'm going to pester.
No. So you'll have to just tell them that you couldn't bring it out of us because we don't know.
We had people from our record company here at the show today. They were very curious when our next record was coming out.
Hold on, from your record company, you are your record company.
We are our record company, but we have people outside of America who distribute.
Yeah, we're affiliated with WIA here.
And do you hate being record company executives?
So we don't have to worry about it too much.
Yeah, we don't worry about it too much.
Our acts haven't made records that often.
Yeah, our acts don't put out that many records.
We badger them.
Yeah.
All right. I'll stop.
No, it's okay.
Well, as long as you've enjoyed the festival surely enjoyed you. I will not ask any more questions about future plans.
Well, you can ask.
No, I wouldn't. I don't want to kick anybody when they're far too happy. Thank you very much for coming in and talking to us.
Well, it's good to talk to you again.
How have you been filling your time? It's a long time.
We've been busy, shockingly.
Yeah.
You know, though there's been no official release, for me for years. We've been busy. I guess we toured quite a bit since the last time we saw you. Possibly toured a little too much on the end of Soul Journey. Yeah, it was the first time we really embarked on a global tour, which was Soul Journey. And I think we kind of went a little too long.
Part of the problem of being on tour for so long is that it ended up being a problem, David, and airplanes.
Well, I don't know that I never really liked to fly very much. The airports got a lot less pleasant, even in and of themselves. It seemed like a terrible way to live your life. It's hard enough to go there if you just need to go on the holidays to go visit your family somewhere else. But if you happen to be in there every day, I can hardly think of a less creative or enjoyable way to go about things. So we started traveling a little bit more by car, or pretty much exclusively by car.
Yeah,
and obviously we got on an airplane to come over here, and we'll get on one to go back, but that'll probably
Are you doing everything land journey while you're here?
Everything here.
We're driving ourselves. Hired a right-hand drive car in Oslo and have driven the whole thing all through Europe and then over here to the tunnel.
I think we put about 30,000 miles on the car in the U.S.
We've driven 30,000 miles since then. So,
do you write on tour ever?
Some. I mean, this driving thing, it started end of last year is really when we completely stopped flying. And trips that take 30 hours to drive, we were doing them instead of getting on airplanes. One of the big differences between the flying and the driving is there's actual sort of cultural input when you drive. I was reminded, even back home, that even just reading all the road signs that go by, it's poetry and history.
Yeah.
All rolled like now you're entering the Cherokee Nation. Okay.
Yeah.
And then your brain
starts. And you see a little bit of what that means.
Yeah.
I just, there's something that I described it as dislocating in a particular way, but it's also, there's a particular kind of weightlessness, or there's a sense of not existing that always seemed to creep into my world, when one day I would be in one city and then the next day I would be 2,000 miles away. It's very strange. I mean, there is some kind of there's a certain kind of art that I see that would be that you could use that feeling, but It seemed, as we started to do this, that there was a feeling of gathering weight and momentum and substance that we just kept inching toward as we, mile by mile, that did contribute in a large way to the writing of these songs and the writing of this record. I hear it as a very earthy record, and it's substantial in a particular way. I mean, it's very difficult when you're working on a project to know exactly what it is, and certainly I'm still too close to it to know exactly, but there was the moment towards the end of the recording when we first played through the songs, listened back to them, and actually it happened to be the moment that they got sequenced, because the first order I played them
in February, right? As we'd been in the studio about 3 weeks, because we basically recorded the record.
That's really quick.
It's pretty quick.
About a month.
That's about how long it usually takes us. Okay. It's about a month.
4 to 5 weeks.
And we'd been in Nashville working, and it was interesting. We didn't take any of the music out of the studio to listen to the whole time. We just left it, just left the tapes, didn't burn CDs, just left the music in the studio. And so this one night when it felt like the pile had sort of accumulated to a point, and Dave said, well, let's listen down to it. And he just started going through the tracks in order, and he spontaneously chose an order. One song, we have one outtake from the record, a song that got pulled. Yeah. And so the one thing that happened was he started to play that song, and he's like, and he substituted another song, and that is the record.
Okay.
Because it was an amazing listening.
Wow.
But to backtrack just a little bit to that feeling of like earthiness and substance, at that moment it felt as though whatever that collection of songs was, it sort of poked its head up, through the soil, and you could see a little something, and you're like, well, okay, this thing exists and it has an identity, and whatever it is, we knew two things at that point, or I with my producer hat on, I knew two things. One was that it had an identity, and the second thing was I was sure that it wasn't our worst record. And that was all that we needed to do to release it. Like, truthfully, I mean, that may not seem like a lot, but it was a huge thing, because you don't want to be doing your worst work. And I was like, I'm sure that this has...
and that sort of necessitates putting it out. In other words, if you have that one certainty that it's not your worst work, which you have to understand, we were coming off years of uncertainty. Okay.
In your own validity, or the value of your work, or what?
Well,
of our current work.
Okay.
We had spent years of wondering where we were at, and if we
writing
were
songs we didn't like,
doing work that we liked.
Right.
And we kept deciding we were doing work we didn't like. And so just to get to the point where we were both certain that this was not our worst work was enough, and was a great point to get to, because it meant, okay, we have to release.
Thank you very much for having talked to me. I love the new album. Six White Horses it invokes the same feeling in me that Guy Clark's New Cut Road does. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I'm glad people like that one. That's such a funny little... It's a kind of modest song, and I was proud of the work we did on that. I don't know what to say, except it seems like a real song.
It makes me think of Ohio apple orchards and all sorts of peculiar things.
That's good.
It's funny, I'll tell you, just because it's strange where that song was started. That song got started, I believe, on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. And I was driving,
but you were listening
and I was
Ralph
listening.
Stanley,
I was
right?
listening to the record.
Yeah.
There's a record of Ralph Stanley that's just all Clawhammer songs.
Yeah.
It makes me happy, because now I feel as though, in a small way, we can take our place alongside. That song can take its place alongside "Dark as a Dungeon" and 16 Tons. and a couple other very unusual songs.
What would have happened if you'd never heard that Ralph Stanley record, or the Stanley Brothers record?
Who knows?
By Gillian Welch and David Rawlings, who were talking to Sandy Hirsch. The producer of the program was Aidan Butler. You were tuned